They profit off of your good intentions based on whatever's going to help them generate the most money. It becomes a profit over people type of thing. And so when you're messing with people's health, like it's no longer about marketing, like it is moral negligence. Okay, so something that I've gotten abnormally irritated by lately is the whole space of like health and fitness, right? The entire industry, primarily in terms of the gurus and the experts and the people who claim to know everything in the right way and the wrong way to do things. And this ultimately has led to what I feel a lot of people getting scammed or at least misled and ultimately not changing their life. And so I can relate insanely heavily to this with me being an aggressively insecure and chubby teen. And that naturally led me to be able to want to start taking my fitness seriously solely for vanity reasons. And a lot of times that's, to be honest, that's still a reason to do it, is strictly for vanity. And so I wanted all the ladies, I wanted all of the glory. And that's exactly what made me an easy target for the health and fitness industry. And so I have been fooled more times than I can count by super slick marketing and sciencey words that sound legit. And so the fitness industry, the health and fitness area as a whole has mastered this gray area. They don't outright lie to you. They just sell you half truths without a full context, right? And so everybody's got their reason. Some chase vanity, some chase money, and some just love fitness and want to make a living doing what they love. And I respect the shit out of it. But a spade is a spade. You know, you've got people taking heat currently. I don't know all the details, but like Mike Israetel, Dr. Milo Wolf, like you have a lot of these guys that are taking some heat for, being a little bit shady in some places. And so the space is flooded with these people selling shortcuts and half truths because they know how to manipulate things to sound one way, and they bank on your confusion. They bank on, or they profit off of your good intentions based on whatever's going to help them generate the most money. It becomes a profit over people type of thing. And so when you're messing with people's health, like it's no longer about marketing, like it is moral negligence. And so most people want to feel better, move better, and live longer. But the fitness industry as a whole has learned that confusion and vagueness sells better than clarity. And so instead of context and truth, you get slogans and surface level tactics. And that's why I feel the need to make a video about this, not to play guru, but to help people burn down the bullshit, right? To give context without the necessary clickbait, and to help even one person love or like learn how to think for themselves again. Because once you understand how to think critically about these things, not just what to follow, not a brand, not an influencer, no fake science is ever going to be able to own your own vitality again. And so I want people to become unfuckwithable with the things closest to their internal locus of control, and their health and fitness being that zone, because you can directly impact it on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm not a doctor. I have an MBA. My master's is in business. It's not in anything related to dietetics or biology. I'm just a nerd who loves the gym, who loves fitness and reads studies for fun. And I experiment on myself like a lab rat, right? And so I do it because I love it. And I care more about the truth of what's going to help people than the actual titles. So what we're going to be looking at today specifically is more on the like metabolism side of things, because this is something that I see so overblown in the space, or like marketed very sexy like, that doesn't actually it's reduced down to some very basic things, and it's trying to describe an entire complex biological system saying, oh, this one thing's going to fix it, right? So metabolism, coffee, calories in, calories out, and stress, what it is, what it isn't, and showing you how the reductionism of a super complex biological system like our body is putting you way further behind than where you should be. Okay, and so first, like, what are some half-truths in health and fitness marketing? So fitness influencers and brands, they thrive on oversimplifying super complex systems to sell you speed, convenience, and certainty. And so this leads to many claims being made on half truths, right? So a half truth is when someone gives you just enough science to sound credible, but it strips out the context that could change the entire meaning or the application of that thing to you. And so this is something that really every industry, but very specifically in this here, the health and fitness industry, that's their favorite weapon. They hand you the shiny part that's going to sell, and they hide the messy part that actually explains it and let your own mind fill in the blanks with your own hope and ignorance to things, right? It's manipulated truth. And this is why you have to think in terms of first principles, which is a way of breaking something down to its fundamental truths rather than relying on surface level assumptions or analogies. And so this is getting down to brass tacks, right? Don't ask if something works, ask why it works and under what conditions does that thing work. Because everything in the body has a trade-off. Energy has to come from somewhere. It's neither created nor destroyed. And so everything when it comes to your body comes down to the fact that it is a complex biological system that requires adaptation to continue to thrive under a lot of these ever-evolving conditions. And so words are important when you're being fed something from a guru. Ludwig Wittgenstein had a quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. The limits of my language are the limits of my language are the limits of my world, right? Words mean stuff. Okay. In the same way that your biology adapts to environment, your mind adapts to the language that it's given. The words that we use shape how we think, what we believe, and what we actually overlook. And that is how a lot of these marketers are able to hijack your logic. Not by lying, but by controlling the vocabulary of truth, right? If you control the language, you can now control the logic. So words like boost, burn, or activate, they sound scientific, but rarely mean what people think or what we typically use as our own definition, right? And so the entire industry has mastered this idea or this thing called semantic drift, which is the meaning of words shifting over time or between groups. And so it's like scientific language versus consumer language. Toned is a super common term. And originally, it meant having muscle with low body fat. Like literally muscle tone means resting muscle tension, right? And so it has now drifted to now mean slim, but not bulky. And so in that example, the drift effect has happened as it has been marketed to women to sell the illusion of strength without size, right? A way to repackage fear of muscle as a product, which would be stupid because muscle is good. Muscle is a good thing. And so this same drift has happened when discussing metabolism, right? And so I only realized it after, running some of my own experience, a very methodical experiment over the last about 4 months now of increasing my own and realizing just how many different things people leave out whenever they talk about metabolism or try to sell you a product to increase or boost your own metabolism, right? So it becomes important to define things, right? So in this example, how do we define metabolism? When it comes to metabolism or any other term when it deals with the human body, we have to know what we are defining metabolism as, right? So different definitions mean different outcomes. And so as the starting point and frame of references, they're completely different, right? And so the scientific definition of metabolism is the total sum of all biochemical reactions that produce, regulate, and repair energy systems in the body, right? So the typical consumer, like myself, it's a misconception that metabolism is just how fast I burn calories or lose fat, right? But metabolism includes things like energy production, so ATP creation, mitochondria, blood sugar regulation, inflammation control, and cellular repair and regeneration. It is an entire energy system, not just how many calories are burned. And sure, this is a byproduct, but it's the sum of everything, not one part of the equation. And so metabolism in this case is the governor of energy efficiency in the human body. So one claim that is often cited out there, that, or at least a big half truth, is the idea of coffee boosts metabolism. And so coffee is like one of my first loves ever, right? I still drink it every day. And the reason that this a half truth resides here, and this is the problem, is because once a definition of something gets blurred, anyone can twist it to sell you something, right? So the second that we forget what a word actually means, that's when the marketing machine can take over. And so they turn these complex biological systems into slogans, right? And nowhere is it clearer than with this word metabolism. So if you look at one of the biggest loves of my life, coffee, you've heard it 1,000 times. Coffee boosts metabolism. And there's a million other foods that people will tell you, oh, it boosts metabolism. Oh my God. And now that we actually understand what metabolism is, we can see that that claim is a half truth. Because with coffee, for example, it has a transient effect on the body, which means it's a short-term physiological change that does not create a lasting adaptation. And so what it does, though, is it does this transient effect through a form of stress metabolism. So this is when energy production depends on stress hormones like adrenaline or cortisol instead of thyroid or glucose oxidation. And so understanding this helps you completely reframe the way you look at metabolism. And it's also going to, for other typical health and fitness buzzwords or heavily marketed desirable things, right? And this doesn't mean that coffee doesn't have its use case in certain areas, but trying to just, throw on a bunch of these things like, oh, I'm just going to eat all these foods in and my metabolism is going to go up without looking at other external factors like stress, how your sleep is, hydration, all these other things, then it's not going to do anything. And you're just going to keep spinning your wheels and buying into these quick hacks and silver bullets instead of just doing the things that you need to do, right? And so looking at that, there's a difference between a stress response and real metabolic function. Okay, this is as I understand it. So drinking coffee to boost metabolism is like a forced output, right? It's not effortless energy. It's borrowed energy from tomorrow. And so you're pulling from the body's emergency reserves, but you're not increasing long-term capacity, right? So coffee feels amazing. And I mean, damn, I love it. I drink it every single day. But quality energy and stimulation are not the same thing, right? Coffee forces your cells to burn harder right now instead of teaching them how to produce energy easily later. And so what we actually want when we talk about improving metabolism is not stimulation, but a form of restoration, right? It's building a better engine. And so that's the difference between stress metabolism and oxidative metabolism. So stress metabolism is what most people live on, and like what I've been living on for like the last 3 years till about 4 or 5 months ago. So it runs on adrenaline, cortisol, and free fatty acids. It's very reactive. It's short-term survival mode. And it's like it keeps you alive, but at a cost, right? You feel wired, but anxious. You're inflamed. You're burnt out after. And it always ends up being in a cycle. Whereas oxidative metabolism, on the other hand, is something that we actually want, right? It uses glucose and oxygen to make ATP cleanly for the mitochondria. It creates energy with efficiency. And so the byproducts are carbon dioxide, water, heat, not stress hormones, and not inflammation, right? That is the metabolism of a body that trusts itself, right? A body that feels safe, warm, focused, creative, strong, not just alert, not just being aware, right? And so the easiest way to remember this is that stress metabolism just burns you faster, sooner, whereas oxidative metabolism builds you stronger and more durable for the long term. So you don't rely on coffee. Then you can drink coffee as an enjoyment, not as a necessity to be able to actually work. We all get super reliant on our stimulants and things to give us energy because we always feel burnt out. We're always tired, right? And so you can drink coffee and live on borrowed energy all day, but until you give yourself a healthy income of energy as opposed to loans in the form of coffee, you're not going to operate at a maximum capacity. And so that's why this goal isn't to find more ways to stimulate your metabolism. And the fitness industry doesn't want to tell you this, but it's to create a body that doesn't need that stimulation in the first place. Because if the fitness industry were to market the things that would actually do you well, they probably wouldn't make as much money, because generally it is harder, right? It is much harder to do. It takes longer. It takes consistency. And most importantly, it takes patience, which is something that is so rare nowadays in this age. And so another thing that we want to look at whenever, it comes to fat loss, performance, whatever it is, and especially the way that fitness talks about it, it's calories in, calories out, right? It's 100% true, but it is also incomplete, because you always see people on the internet arguing like, oh, calories in, calories out. Some people are going to say it doesn't matter, it's not real, whereas other people are saying like, oh, you can't overcome the law of thermodynamics, right? And so the base cell level truth is that you cannot fake real energy. But if you zoom out a bit, the pattern repeats with this whole calories in, calories out debate. And so calories in, calories out it sounds airtight, which for the most part it is, except it's not quite that simple, right? Because your metabolism isn't a calculator. It's adaptive and it's dynamic. And so I'm not saying that calories in, calories out is wrong. If you are strictly looking at weight loss, and you are looking at fat loss, and you are looking in a more condensed time frame, you burn more calories than you consume. Like if you burn more calories than you consume, you're going to lose weight, right? You're not going to break the law of thermodynamics and physics. But in this case, I'm not just talking about weight loss. I'm also talking about metabolic efficiency. And so it's about how the body actually regulates that energy, not just spends it. Right. And so it ultimately is what keeps you going longer. Right. I would argue that most people who say they want to lose fat don't actually mean weight loss. We mean better body composition, right? More muscle, less fat, higher energy, better recovery. Welcome back to the language usage conversation from earlier. But this is about how the system adapts, right? And so when calories drop, your body doesn't just sit and take it, right? It responds. It adjusts hormones, changes thyroid output. It shifts fuel sources. It slows other functions down and raises others. All of this is changing at all times. And so that's what adaptive really means. So your metabolism in this case is constantly deciding whether to burn, store, or protect things. And so that's where cortisol, fasting, and stress really start to come into play. Those are levers that your body pulls to survive through energy scarcity. And so this is some of the things that people get confused, where they're like, oh, it's not all about calories in, calories out, hormones and all that stuff. Dude, it's so complicated for each individual person, but like you can't say either one is not true, because there is validity to both. And that's the point I'm making here. Hopefully you're seeing that through the way that I'm talking about like how metabolism affects with calories in, calories out. And so another thing that we can look at in terms of the industry as a whole and how complicated it is, let's look at cortisol, fasting, and adaptation, right? A little bit step further into calories in, calories out. So fasting raises cortisol in a short, condensed time frame. Not because it's bad. We wouldn't have it if it was bad. It is a feature. But once again, it's all about ratios. How often are you using it? But your body still needs energy when food isn't coming in. And so cortisol's job is to start to mobilize some of that fuel and to pull glucose from the liver and fat storage so that you can keep moving on, right? And so short term, it's a very useful adaptation. But a problem that can show up is when that state becomes your new baseline. Because if you're fasting often and you're training hard and you're sleeping only a little bit and you're juggling work, stress, your body doesn't know it's doing intermittent fasting, right? It just thinks of it like it's under some kind of threat. And so when stress chemistry becomes chronic over a long enough period of time, it can start to downshift the things that aren't essential for survival. So thyroid output, muscle growth, libido, repair, digestion, all those other things, it's going to start focusing on doing more things that are just going to keep you alive. Because there's a hierarchy in which in your body, in the way it wants to use its energy, right? And so that's how a tool for health like fasting, which has shown so many benefits for a lot of people, can quietly start to become a slower break on your metabolism. And so this is where, once again, I don't disagree with like, oh, everybody should intermittent fast. Oh, no, you shouldn't. You should eat 8 meals a day. Like there's always context that depends on here, but if you understand the first principles and the base root of everything, it's going to help you be able to make better decisions for yourself. And so this tool, like intermittent fasting, can be a slow break on your metabolism, right? And so a lot of people love it. They have lived perfectly healthy lives on it. And just like I already said, it's a tool, right? It doesn't mean you have to do it forever. But where I personally ran into issues was I had been intermittent fasting for a long time. I wouldn't eat till 2 o'clock every day. I would eat from like 2 to like 9 was kind of my window. But whenever I combine that with intense training in the morning and a lot of caffeine and stimulants and chronic stress from my job, which is this year has been insanely stressful, over time, my BMR dropped, my metabolism or my maintenance calories had dropped from about, 2,900 to 3K down to 2,450, right? And my energy levels tanked. I was always getting tired early in the day or like later in the day by about 1, 2 o'clock. I would always have those mid-afternoon slumps. But I didn't necessarily break my metabolism. It was doing what it was supposed to do, what the body was designed to do. I was just living off of stress. And so that's whenever it did all click for me, where short-term fasting can teach adaptation, but chronic fasting can teach some sort of suppression in certain contexts, right? And so it's not about the method. It's about the context of where you're at in your life. So if your life is already high stress, adding more stress through fasting may not be the best move at the time. Once again, it depends how much you weigh too and what your current health markers look like. But it could lead to more stress and dysfunction. Just talk with a professional and a doctor about this, please. So instead of asking, is fasting, for instance, good or bad, ask, is my body safe enough right now to fast? Am I in a place where I can do that effectively? Okay. And so this also comes into like, okay, when you say you want to fast or you want to boost your metabolism or whatever, are you looking for just weight loss? Or are you looking for performance improvements? Are you looking for a better body composition? Because they're not the same thing. So when stress is running the show, you're going to lose weight. Stress can make you lighter, but it can also make you weaker. And that's why weight loss doesn't always equal progress for you, okay? Because the goal is not to weigh less, it is to function better. And that's where this whole body composition and metabolic efficiency come in, right? So body composition is the ratio of muscle to fat and other tissues in the body. And if your metabolic efficiency is going to largely determine this, right? And so you can lose weight through restriction, but at the cost of muscle, some thyroid function, metabolic rate. But true body recomposition relies on preserving energy efficiency while shifting those mass ratios, right? The scale only measures one variable, total mass, right? But it doesn't tell you what you lost, how you're performing, or what your body is actually adapting to. And so you can weigh less and still have a slower metabolism. You can weigh the same and look dramatically different. But because progress isn't just a number, it's how your body functions, right? And so if you really want to know whether what you're doing is working, track more than the scale. Track your training performance. Are your lifts going up? Are you recovering faster? Track your daily performance. Focus, sleep, mood, energy. Those are metabolic metrics too, and they don't just show up on a bathroom scale. And so the scale can tell you what changed, but your performance is what's going to tell you why it changed. And when both are moving in the right direction, that's where the real transformation is actually happening. And so if you are buying into some of these things that the fitness industry is telling you, like, oh, green tea extract, it boosts metabolism, it boosts fat loss, whatever. Here are just some ways that you can tell if you are operating in that dimension biologically. Is it actually working? And so I always default to these questions. Do I have more energy? Is my training performance going up and to the right? Am I mentally clear? Is my mood relatively stable? Do I have energy without caffeine? And am I alert but calm? Okay, and if you answer yes to a lot of these are signs that I have personally experienced of an improved metabolism and health overall. And so I've also noticed that like my hunger is different. Like it's not a dull boredom hunger. Like when I'm hungry, like my body lets me know I'm hungry in every way possible. And I'm able to eat to where I don't overindulge and binge. basically. So it's not like this, it's a very sharp, like, hey, just give me some right now, and I feel a lot better after I eat. And so the single biggest indicator, though, through all this, whenever you are listening to these gurus and you're applying the things that they're telling you, you just need to understand this. Okay, is your overall motivation for life better? Is it easier to be disciplined? Because we try to force discipline a lot when the reality is our energy levels are shit and we actually just don't have the health to like have the energy to do it, right? So if you have an abundance of energy, it's going to be that much easier to feel disciplined. And so when you have energy, you want to use it. And the more that you use it, the more you will get. Energy begets energy. And at some point, we all have to stop outsourcing all of our biology to just slogans from these gurus and understand that our body is not just a spreadsheet.